Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Guns of Infinity. So, in the last episode, we managed to we've actually reached the town of Pharyngea, and now we're outside as they're trying to lay siege to it, and it appears that it's going to be a long battle, but they're going to be testing out some new weaponry and such. And we also got to play a hand of Tassinward? I think that's what it's called. We got to play a hand of that with the Duke of Havenport's brother. So, we are trying to build some interesting ties and things like that. But yeah. But that's so far what is going on, and we will jump back into this. Now we're picking up pretty much right where we left off. If Steam could go away, thank you, please. You want to go away there, Steam? There you go. All right, so we've already read this, and we shall head forward. The night is still warm when you step out of Lord Marcus Havenport's pavilion, despite the fact that by your reckoning it must be no more than an hour before midnight. Despite the late hour, it seems you are not the only one up and about. Low fires dot the camp around, and from them radiate the sound of an army at rest, the low burble of quiet conversation, the rattle of dice, the rough sounds of masculine voices in song, and the quiet but omnipresent bubbling of kettles. For some time you walk in silence, a step behind Colonel Keene as the two of you head for the part of the camp where your regiment now makes its home. There's really little to say. You had known him only tenuously before the Battle of Blagia, and had little chance to speak with him after he was made lieutenant colonel, an effective regimental commanding officer. In fact, it might be possible that this evening has been the longest you have spent in his company outside the field of battle. Besides, you tell yourself it would hardly be proper for a junior officer to demand conversation of a superior. So, for a few minutes at least, you follow your regiment's second in command as he makes his way through the rows of orderly tents, his expression lost in thought. This must be Pharyngea's walls. Finally, your superior officer speaks. Draken, he begins as he stops and turns to face you. Yes, sir, you reply. Now that you've been with us for the better part of 2 months, I would request your opinion regarding the enterprise in which this army is currently engaged. He says, his hands gesturing airily to his left. You do not need to follow Keene's hand to know exactly what he's gesturing at. For to your left, beyond the field fortifications, the sappers' trenches, and the 600 paces of dead ground, stands the solid, defiant bulk of the walls of Pharyngea, still unbroken after 5 months of siege. You want my thoughts on the siege, sir? Keene shakes his head. No, I want your opinion of the war, of which the siege is merely one small part. Ooh, interesting. Trust the king's plan to bring us victory soon, sir. I believe that we shall have victory, but at great cost. With all due respect, I believe this whole conflict to be pointless. Well, I don't think it's pointless. It kind of is, but I don't think it's completely pointless. Because, we're talking with other officers here, I'll just say I trust the king's plan to bring us victory soon. Is that what you really think, then? Keene seems to ask you. Silence hangs in the still night air for a moment, then Keene shakes his head. Of course it is. Why would it be otherwise? Another pause. Keene seems to hesitate, his eyes shrinking into the distance. Well then, I shall pray you are correct, Draken, he finally says, a little tonelessly, and continues onwards. You walk the rest of the way in silence. He seems to kind of have that thing where it's like, that's how a lot of these officers seems like they kind of have this thing where they kind of need to constantly be boosted up, just the same way Elson was to a certain degree. Corporal Marion is waiting for you when you step inside your tent, a mug of tea already in hand. Letters came for you while you were out, sir, he says as he hands you the heavy pewter mug of piping liquid and begins stripping off your greatcoat and helmet. They're on your desk. You nod as you take your first tentative sip of tea. You make a mental note to finish it all before you go to bed. After all, you have had nothing to drink since sunset save claret, whiskey, and canned spirits. You can already feel the beginning of what is likely to be tomorrow's hangover. Will that be all, sir? Marion asks in an attempt to remind you that he's still there in the most unobtrusive way possible. Yes, that will be all, you reply. Good night, Marion. The corporal gives you a light bow as he steps out of your tent, to return to his own bedroll. Good night, sir. Your tent is hardly as large or well appointed as that of a more senior officer like Lord Marcus Havenport. Still, as an officer's lodging, however temporary, it is far superior to the quarters of your enlisted men, where your regular dragoons, corporals, and even your sergeants must share a small rectangular construction with 2 or 3 others. Your own tent boasts twice the space of their cramped residence. While they must sleep upon thin bedrolls, as an officer, you have been provided a narrow cot drawn from stores, a small cast iron stove, as well as a battered chair and a small weathered desk. Jesus, get a freaking stove. Okay. I feel sorry for the poor bastard that has to get that. It is this last set of furnishing which you turn your attention to now. For as your Batman had promised, a pile of letters sits atop the scratched and battered surface, barely visible in the faint light given off by the embers of a steel hot stove. You take a few moments to settle in your chair and get the small brass oil lamp on your desk burning bright enough. Then you turn your attention to the letters. The first comes sea-stained and slightly crumpled. It doesn't take long to spot your family seal pressed into the red wax holding the letter closed. The second letter also comes weathered and discolored by some long voyage. It bears a different seal, one you could swear you've seen before. You stop for a moment to take a closer look at the familiar-looking sigil in the flickering lamplight. Then you come to a realization. You have in fact seen its like before, stamped in silver and gold relief on the signet ring of a man now nearly 3 years dead. The letter is from the hunters of Wolf's Wood. The next letter is lighter, flimsier, though just as travel-stained. It has suffered in its passage across the Collegian Sea as lighter paper often does. Still, it seems mostly intact, and the somewhat hastily pressed royal seal stamped into the wax makes its provenance instantly recognizable. Grenadier Square. So which letter will you read first? I think I want to read the letter from my family first. I mean, they're my family, so of course I want to read that first. You pull open the sealed letter with a combination of trepidation and anticipation. As good as it is to hear from your Lord Father, you are still apprehensive of his good opinion of you. Your eyes dart to the first words of the page. My beloved son, I pray this letter finds you healthy and whole. There have been the most wild speculations here at home regarding the situation of the army currently besieging Caringia, and I can only hope the worst of them are entirely unfounded. I must apologize for not writing more frequently. The estate is in much uproar as of late. The courts, in spite, I must add, of vigorous opposition, including my own, has levied some new tax on the use of public markets to fund the war, a measure which has driven our tenants to no small extremity of deprivation. I have seen fit to lower the rents again, as I know you would urge me to do. As a result, our revenues are sadly much curtailed, and I have had great trouble in finding new economies to maintain ourselves. The money which you are sending us has come with the most heartening regularity and has done great things in helping ease our late troubles. Though your shouldering of a part of our house's financial burdens is not something which is expected or required of you, it is proof to one and all of your fine character. Your mother is well and sends her love, as do your brother and sister. I await your reply, and I am proud to remain your father. You set the letter back down and think to your family's finances. It seems clear from your father's words that the money you are sending back will not go very far in clearing your house's debt. But can you really afford to send more? Ooh boy. Well, I mean, I do have a lot of money. So, I mean, I guess I could just go ahead and use my income to kind of help out, because if I'm not mistaken, I do remember playing a little bit of the beta, and debt is going to be a major thing, and I think how you put money towards the debt starting right now is going to pretty much determine your debt in the last game, of course if you make it. So I'll go ahead and I'll just, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and commit all my money to it, because it seemed like I'm getting a lot of money through spoils and things like that. So yes, I can and I will. I commit my entire income to clearing my family's debts. Plus, it would be nice because if I do remember reading correctly on a recent Patreon post, perhaps, I think it's either a Patreon post or one of the posts on Cataphract's website. You can actually, there's going to be big, huge projects that you can do and you can kind of fund. So you're going to need money for that, of course. So I should probably go ahead and try and start building some of that goodwill right now and just go ahead and see if I can pay off some of these debts. So that way I can actually have money freed up. And if I can actually do the right things, then I can turn around and have me some nice, huge projects going on. So let's try and work on that. There should be no compromise on this. Of that you are resolved. Your first priority is the clearing of your family's debts by all the means at your disposal. The fact that you have been retaining some of your income for other ends now strikes you as something of an oversight, one to be corrected immediately. You shall have Marion see to it in the morning. In any case, what shall you do now? I guess I'll just go in order and just read them in order. So let's see. Let's read the letter from the Wolfswood. Sound like it's from the north in Game of Thrones. You run your thumb under the folded edge of the rich, thick paper. The stuff is smooth under your fingertips, far better than what you could afford for sure. You work your fingernail under the edge, and with a single flick of your thumb, you pull the wax seal apart, folding the paper open. The script is fine and spidery, like the sort which is taught by the high-priced calligraphy tutors which instruct the children of high nobility to write even better than lesser Bane bloods. It is a note that bears reading carefully, and so you do, taking care with every word. Sir Darren, I have never had the privilege of meeting you, sir, but nonetheless I write to you, for it is my great hope that you will be of assistance to me in the cause to which I am now devoted. It is my understanding that you had the privilege of serving under the command of my late son, the 12th Viscount of Wolfswood. I remember him likely as you do, a man full of enthusiasm for all noble pursuits. I am told he fell upon the field of Blagia whilst performing an act of great heroism, and thus stands eligible for elevation as a Saint of the Red. My intention is to see this possibility fulfilled at some time in the future. In this enterprise, I would ask for your aid, both as a man who served under my son's command and a well-regarded officer of the king's army in your own right. This war has already taken both my sons from me. Without them, the great noble house which was so ennobled by their presence will die out forever. This enterprise is my best hope of seeing it remembered. I pray that you respond swiftly. Lady Frederica the All-Hunter, Dowager Viscountess of Wolfswood. Interesting. You set the letter down and let out a breath you did not know you were holding. It is a strangely personal message. Desperation and resolve jacketed by stilted formality, but it asks your aid in an enormous endeavor to effectively elevate your old commanding officer to godhood. Of course, you have little doubt that Lieutenant Colonel Hunter, as you knew him, fits the criteria for a red martyrdom. By all accounts, he had fallen on the field of Blagia whilst performing an act of utmost bravery, rallying his battalion of grenadiers around him so that 2 full brigades of the Duke of Wolfram's army could make good their retreat. And yet, to elevate a man, even an undisputed hero, to sainthood is a long and tricky process, even for a powerful noble house. Worse yet, whatever rivals that the Hunters might have would no doubt take an interest in opposing such a move. If you were to offer your support for it, Wolfswood's enemies could become yours as well. Still, he was your commanding officer once, and a fine fighting man besides. Perhaps it is something you owe his memory. And you know, I think I do owe his memory. I mean, Hunter was a nice guy. And it also will put me on a good side too. And it would also kind of help me, get the Hunters on my side. So yeah, I mean, that's also a powerful ally to have on my side. I'm just thinking ahead here. And who knows, maybe they have some daughters or something that I can turn around and marry, or marry my brother to, or something. So there's always that. I'll do it. I'll pledge the Hunters my support. You take a piece of paper from your desk drawer and ink your pen. It only takes the space of a few minutes to dash off a letter offering your support in the campaign to elevate your old commanding officer to the ranks of the Saints of the Red. The reply barely takes up a third of the page, but there's not exactly much to say. Writing as you are to a woman whom you have never met. You sign your name and titles on the bottom. Then, after waiting a few moments for the ink to dry, you fold and seal the letter with a few drops from a stick of red wax and your signet ring. Then you place the sealed reply in your desk drawer. It is far too late in the night to send anything off, but you make a mental note to order Marion to send it by courier to Naringia tomorrow morning. You shut your drawer and turn back to your desk. What now? I don't remember if you actually get a chance to, like, decide what your family, logo is essentially going to be, like what your banner is actually going to be. I think you do. I'm not sure if it's in this game or if it's in Lords, but we'll see. Let's read the missive from Grenadier Square. Oh, achievements. Wonderful. Okay, now go away. Thank you. All right, go away. Thank you. You break open the seal with a combination of anticipation and dread. After all, the seal itself gives no indication as to the letter's contents, and Grenadier Square awards commendations and cashier's officers with communiques written upon the same type of paper. Do you want to go away? Thank you. There you go. And then you come back. Wonderful. All right. Then you unfold the paper, and within moments, your lingering apprehension washes away. Captain Draken, it is our pleasure to inform you that the officers of His Tierran Majesty's government have concluded their assessment of the ransom taken by 3rd Squadron, the Royal Dragoons, on the 21st day of the 4th month of the year 607. The duty now falls upon us to disperse the monies thence gained. Thence gained, my God. Your share of this sum comes to a total of 801 crowns, 6 towers, and 18 pence. This amount has been duly transferred to your accounts in the Royal Bank of Vittoria and may be drawn upon at any time. Your obedient servant, Major Eldritch d'Ar Huertas, Office of Ransom and Prizes. So there it is. Almost 3 years after you, Elson, and Kazarosta captured Yusuf of Torinobarit in the forests of southern Antar, you have your prize money at last. While the skirmish which won you your ransom was soon forgotten after the catastrophe at Blagia the month after, your belated reward for the cunning plan which led you to victory in that battle is far from minor. 800 crowns is a fortune to most, enough to pay for your promotion to major once you gain your requisite 3 years seniority as captain. You set the note down and take a deep breath to clear the dizziness from your head. You should have to make decisions on how to spend your newfound wealth eventually, but you suppose it is far too late in the evening to make such serious decisions. Thus, you deal with the last of your letters. There's nothing else left for you to do tonight, save go to bed. You clear off your desk, finish off the dregs of your now lukewarm tea, and snuff out your lamp before stripping off your tunic and boots and climbing into the soft embrace of your narrow cot. Okay, not bad. So we got a nice little amount of money. Let's see how much we got now. We should be in, 2,053 wealth. Now, I have no income, so I'm definitely going to need that money. Don't know for what, but I'm probably going to need that money. So, that's going to definitely help. I don't know how much I'm going to end up spending on other things in the future, but we'll see. All right. You wake in the morning to the sound of cannon fire. That is not a particularly new occurrence. Every day the Duke of Havenport's army bombards the city of Caringia, but the shelling so far has been ineffective. The light guns and mortars of the field artillery are of little use against Caringia's massive fortifications. This morning, however, there's a new sound joining the soft thump of mortar fire and the low boom of field cannon. A sharp, echoing, reverberating thing, the sound of 2 thunderous lions roaring in quick succession. You feel the earth shake and your tent rattle each time the sound comes. There is little uncertainty in your mind as to the source of the new sound. Sure enough, when you step outside, you confirm your suspicion with your own eyes. Nestled into the immense earthworks between the siege camp and the city sit a set of monstrous artillery pieces, 5 of them, each mounting an immense gun barrel of black iron, easily the width of a fully grown horse and likely twice as long. Men in the gray face jackets of the engineers swarm around each piece, dwarfed by the huge guns and the complex structures of metal and stone which serve as their mountings. As you watch, one of the men standing near the breech of the furthest gun leaps backwards, a string in his hand. You see the immense gun heave, the entire construction rolling backwards on a set of iron tracks as the muzzle spits a gigantic tongue of flame and smoke. The sound of the gun's report washes over you as if it were a gust of wind. Before it fades, it is joined by a second, more distant roar. Your eyes follow the new sound to the walls of Caringia, its stone face newly marred. A cloud of fire and pulverized rock rises from the crater of the shell's impact. When the dust clears a little, you can see the full effect of the morning's bombardment. Even from 1.5 kilometers away, you can see the jagged wounds punched into the walls by the new guns. Before long, those wounds shall become breaches, through which the brave vanguard of Havenport's army must assault. It should not be long now. All right, they're not going to be able to hide behind those damn walls for much longer. All right? You do not get much time to dwell upon it. Marion is soon at your side with a jug of water, a towel, and a freshly sharpened razor. If the thunderous noise of the monstrous new cannons rattles your Batman's nerves at all, he gives no indication of it. The razor remains rock steady in his hands, even as the siege engines rant and roar their iron battle cries not 300 paces away. Breakfast comes after you're washing up. Tea, sticks of cornbread fried in the Kean style, and sausage in the Salt Coast fashion, cooked with spicy red pepper. Despite the difficult supply situation, officers like you might still enjoy such meals, not unlike what you might find in a cafe in Crittenden or Lyon's Court. Your enlisted men must make do with their bread and salted pork rations. You have heard that the rankers in the line infantry regiments are lucky to get even that. Your first meal of the day does not detain you for more than a few minutes. Then you see to your appointments with Marion. With your subordinates handling the day-to-day business of drilling and ordering your men, you're left with an exceptional amount of free time, more than enough to see to personal affairs. All well and good, as there's little else to do in a siege camp for cavalry officer, save arrange the occasional patrols and sign off on a few requisition forms. What do you arrange to do first? Let me see. I would like to see how Lady Katarina is faring. I shall visit Master Gehring and see what he's up to. I want to make sure my men are doing well. I would like to continue writing my memoirs. Let's see. Let's look at these stats here. I mean, I guess I probably should talk to my men also, because I mean, these are kind of hanging around at 52, 60, and 52. And I have a sneaking suspicion that a gigantic battle is going to happen. I don't remember if there's different routes or do you actually have to get into the battle. Every time I've done this, I've gotten into the battle and I've died quite a few times. The Darren playthroughs that you saw in the first video, those are the only ones that actually were successful. Every other time they failed, and there were many names that failed. So yeah. Yeah, let me talk to the men and make sure they have their morale up as far as I can possibly get it. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to talk to Katarina, because I do want to talk to Master Gehring too. So there's that. And I do want to continue writing my memoirs because I'm going to need money now that I don't have an income. So Lady Katarina might have to wait. Yeah, let's see how the men are doing. You spend the day on the open ground outside the camp, watching your men drill and practice the maneuvers from which war is made under the watchful eyes of their officers. What you see is alarming to the extreme. It is not that your subordinates are anything but diligent in their duties, nor is it any sort of earnest insubordination. Your officers train their men in accordance with both the spirit and the letter of the king's regulation. In fact, that is rather the problem. The king's regulations require that the commanding officer of each company of infantry and troop of cavalry see to the training of their own unit independently. Ostensibly, the relevant regulations were drafted to allow the officer in question to gain both the confidence of men under their command, as well as self-assurance in their own abilities. Certainly, you can vouch for the success of such an approach yourself. After all, those same regulations meant that you had been given a free hand in the training and preparation of your own troops before Blagia, something which may have saved your life and the lives of many others in the great battle. Unfortunately, in the case of your own squadron, such an approach has led to your men being trained by 3 lieutenants of vastly different temperaments, utilizing vastly different approaches. Sandoral drills his men right out of the manual, but punishes infractions with no more than the stern lectures. Blaylock, on the other hand, resorts to the flat of his saber to correct even the most minute of imperfections. Lord Renard's approach seems most bizarre of all. His troops spend the whole day in the saddle, supposedly practicing horsemanship. In reality, their boyishly enthusiastic commander leads them about the open field at a gallop as he sabers down imaginary foes and regales them with stories of his famed ancestors in his clipped, dandyish accent. Already you are beginning to see the fragile unity of your squadron unravel. You can only imagine what might happen when these increasingly disparate troops are thrown together and sent into battle as a unit. And again, depriving your subordinates of their ability to train and prepare their own men would almost certainly serve to stifle their fledgling sense of self-confidence as king's officers. Perhaps it would be better for you to leave your officers alone and hope that they learn the needed lessons themselves before it's too late. After giving it some thought, you consider the possibility of a third option. If you were able to set the problem before your lieutenants and senior NCOs, perhaps they would be able to come up with a solution themselves without your heavy-handed intervention. Then again, they might end up doing nothing but shout at each other. Do you choose to step in? If so, how? Interesting. Well, I can order that Lieutenant Finley take over all training. I shall take over training and institute my own approaches. I don't think my soldiering is high enough for that. I let Staff Sergeant Landrell take over training. That wouldn't be a bad choice because, I mean, he seems to always know the right things, but he does have his own way of doing things, and I think that might end up conflicting with everyone else. Plus he's a staff sergeant. That would conflict with the lieutenant aspect of it. I call a staff meeting and get my subordinates to figure out a solution. I think I like that, actually. Yeah. I'll not tread on my subordinates' feet. I'll leave things as they are. Yeah, I'm definitely not gonna do that. Yeah, I think I'll call a staff meeting and hopefully I'll just kind of stay out of it and see if they come to a solution. Now that I'm a higher rank, I need to kind of just be the person that just organizes things and then let them turn around and figure things out, not necessarily give them the answers. So yeah, I think I'll go with that. You call in your lieutenants and senior NCOs after the day's training. Over afternoon tea, you set the problem before them. Immediately, the low table is surrounded by hesitant and nervous expressions, each man waiting for another to speak first. Finally, it is Sandro who answers. I had my suspicions that we might have been doing something wrong, sir. A chorus of quiet agreement and contrite nods follow Sandro's admission. It appears that he had not been the only one to notice the detrimental effect that the varied methods of training were having on the squadron's readiness. The bespectacled lieutenant chews on his lip in thought for a moment, then raises a finger. Perhaps we might fix this by coordinating better. Maybe a meeting like this once a week to pool our thoughts. Damn your myopic eyes, Sandro, Blaylock blurts out. What good will sitting around and talking do? We'll need to settle matters more drastic than that, I think. Your troop sergeants have spent the past few minutes silent, as out of their depth as they are in the more genteel settings of an officer's tea, but now Sergeant Campus, Blaylock's troop sergeant, speaks up. Talking is a start, the NCO begins, but we need to make sure something actually gets done. We can work out a new drill schedule now and submit it when you all meet again. Blaylock nods warily. It'll be something, I suppose. He pauses, words stuck in his mouth for a short moment, until he finally wedges them out. Very well, we might as well give it a try then. Sure enough, within days, your squadron's senior NCOs bring in a revised training plan for your approval. The new system proves to be an ingenious one. Instead of training each troop individually, each of the officers concentrate on drilling the whole squadron in a certain aspect. Sandro takes over dismounted drill, Blaylock deals with the problem cases, and Lord Renner directs his efforts towards the task of drilling the men in mounted maneuvers. In the meantime, your sergeants continue drilling by the troop, ensuring that your officers and men are still capable of fighting well whilst detached from the main body of the squadron. The combination seems to work. Not only do your squadron's drills as a single unit reforge them into a unified fighting force, but their drills by the troop keep them sharp enough for any eventuality. The improvement does not just manifest among your rankers. As your squadron's capabilities begin to markedly improve, both your officers and men gain more and more confidence in their abilities, confidence which then rubs off on the men they are training. You can only hope that you've caught the problem early enough for the new training regimen to undo all the harm caused by the bumbling of the weeks previous. Interesting. Okay. All right. So that worked out pretty well. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, the discipline is now 66. Morale is a 72. Nice. Loyalty is a 52. I would like that to be higher, but yeah, I mean, I can work with that. I can work with that. So, okay. Yeah, I think that's going to be the thing that we're going to see more and more often now is that we're going to have to kind of step back more and more. And I can imagine that when Lords comes through, you're probably going to have to, choose field commanders and leaders and stuff like that. So you're going to have to step back further and further and just kind of trust it and trust the process, as they always say, and see how things work out. All right. Let's move forward. The next morning, you note with some pleasure that Garing's new guns have already made significant progress in creating a breach. Even from your distant vantage point, you can see the city's fortress walls begins to give way. Rumor has it that the breach will be wide enough to be assaulted in less than a month. Good news, for summer is beginning to draw to a close. Till then, you will still have some time to see to other affairs. What shall you do? I'm going to speak to Garing first. I'm not going to talk to Katarina. I'm just going to wait for it for right now. Plus, we're kind of in two different fields anyway, so I kind of feel like Katarina is... I mean, I'm interested, and I would definitely love to know more about the good lady Katarina, but she's sneaky, and I don't know if I really need to deal with that right now. So I'm just going to focus on trying to do other pursuits and stuff right now. So, Master Garing, what are you up to? It is not in any way difficult to find Edmund Garing. Indeed, you are able to locate him even from the ground before your own tent. The arms merchant sits at a folding table on top of a low platform of pounded earth and wood, not far from the cannon which he had helped design. When you climb up the stairs to the top of the platform, you find the black-jacketed man in a frenzy of motion, rapidly alternating between scribbling something down on a notepad with a pencil and peering off into the distance down a brass contraption which you quickly recognize as a rangefinder. I would suggest depressing the guns by perhaps half a degree, Garing says, still focused on his device and notebook, perhaps mistaking you for one of the engineers tasked with sighting his guns. His voice is taut and clipped, quite unlike the last time you spoke to him. Some of the shots are going high now that we've deconstructed much of the top level of the wall. He turns over his shoulder, only to stop, his eyes widening slightly in surprise. Wait a moment, you're not Major Diaz. Garing purses his lips for a moment. You are... He snaps his fingers in a rapid succession born of irritability, once, twice, 3 times. You're Draken, of the Dragoons, correct? You nod. I was, last I checked, Master Garing. You reply with a sardonic grin. Garing chuckles for a moment at your little jibe. Excellent, excellent. Anything you need? See, this is, again, that's one of the things I do like about these choice of games is that you do have some type of personality. It's kind of easy to imagine yourself in these roles as opposed to when you're just a blank slate and you're making decisions and you don't really feel a part of the story. You kind of have a detachment there. So it's really kind of, and then when certain choices don't go your way, you really just feel pulled out of it. So again, it's just one of those things that I like. Let me see. I wanted to ask if the new cannons are performing well, or I wish to know how you've been selling in, sir. Let's ask about the cannons. Be professional. They are performing brilliantly, sir. Garing replies, his voice full of enthusiasm. Already I have identified over 60 faults, including, is that a good thing? Including several which make each gun wholly inefficient for the military use for which they are currently employed. You cannot help but be puzzled by that. How could you say that these guns are performing brilliantly if they are so plagued with defects? Garing smiles. You must remember, sir, that these guns are not just weapons. They are also prototypes, works in progress, if you would. Every defect that we discover here shall be corrected in the next iteration. In the meantime, the current versions, he gestures towards the battery of iron monsters before you, will still serve the purpose of which His Grace, the Duke, required them. You nod. Once the black-coated man puts it that way, it makes a great deal more sense. The arms merchant smiles at your comprehension. Was there anything else? How are you doing? Yeah, how are you doing? Are you settling in just nice? Garing pauses in thought for a moment, then nods. I suppose things have been going well enough, though I cannot say that I shall miss living in a tent. He takes a breath, purses his lips, and gives you a faint grin. Aside from the lack of what I might consider basic amenities, I have not had much difficulty. Most of the rankers among the engineers know their business well enough, which means I barely have to deal with their officers at all, thank the saints. Are the engineer officers really so bad, you ask? Garing frowns and shakes his head. Some of them are decent, Major Diaz for one. The problem is that even the good ones are uniformly useless. Your eyebrow rises in curiosity. How do you mean, sir? The black-coated man shakes his head and sighs. They lack professional knowledge, to the point where they do not even understand the basics of the duties which their men must perform. I would imagine that they had no schooling in the finer points of engineering on the day they purchased their commissions and have had little opportunity to pick them up in the meantime. They are, in fact, glorified couriers, passing orders from high command and leaving the burden of interpreting them to their non-commissioned subordinates. You nod. That would be a problem. You can't imagine how a unit could properly function whilst commanded by an officer who did not know his business. It would be akin to a company of foot commanded by a man ignorant of musket drill. At least the sergeants and corporals know their business, Gary concludes. Sometimes it feels as if they are the ones who should be running things. You know, that is one of the things that I always found kind of odd about things when you look at the history of warfare and stuff like that. You would think, again, that they would do certain things from a practical sense because it makes sense. But of course, when you have stuff like this, where it's just like, oh yeah, you can just buy the next rank, it's not even that big a deal. You could see how that would be problematic later on. Before you can reply, you hear the sound of booted feet rushing up the wooden steps leading to the observation platform. The source of the sound reveals itself quickly enough. A young lieutenant, perhaps 18 or 19, good lord, in a burnt orange line infantry jacket faced with the iron gray of the engineers. Master Garing, Sergeant Worthing wants you down by the guns, the boy says, a complete lack of self-assurance in his voice. He says that he's found some sort of problem in the elevation screw, he reports, the pitch of his voice climbing into a question with the last two words as if they had been wholly unfamiliar to him. Very well, Garing replies, his voice laden with an admirable amount of patience. Admirable. I shall see to it presently. My God, my tongue. The black-coated man stands from his chair, but stops and turns to you before taking more than a step away. Ah yes, before I forget, Captain, there's something I would like to show you. Come to my tent at this time next week. He scrawls a quick sentence in his notebook before tearing out the page, folding it in two and handing it to you. I am quartered with the engineers. Give this to the men at the door. They will let you in. Now, if you will excuse me, good day. With that, Garing hurries off, the nervous, clueless engineer in tow. You tuck the unfolded note away in your pocket, wondering what exactly one of the men behind the Unified Kingdom's greatest gun-making firm would have to show to a captain of dragoons. Something illegal, probably. Not sure. Also, when I saw that at a glance, I nearly said United Kingdom, but it's the Unified Kingdom. Totally not the UK. Well, the UK, but not the UK. Anyway, the first thing that you notice about Edmund Garing's tent is the smell. Raw iron, sawdust, glue, and the sharp stink of gunpowder. The reason behind it becomes obvious, for in the place of a desk, Garing has set up a small workbench covered in pliers, awls, knives, and a truly immense assortment of drawings. The man himself sits over one of these drawings now, adding a new line to the diagram of some intricate-looking mechanism with the aid of a pencil and ruler. Good morning, Captain Draken, he says absently as he continues his work. How could you have known it was you? After all, you did not introduce yourself. How did you begin to ask? Maybe he's one of the one of the twins from the lot, and then the life and suffering of Sir Bronte. I have no idea. It is the morning of the 18th, and the guards let you through. If you had been anyone else, I would have heard gunfire. Garing replies as he puts aside his ruler and pencil. I trust they gave you no trouble. You shake your head. I showed them your note. They let me through. Garing smiles. Excellent. In that case, let me show you what you've come here to see. Garing reaches into the pocket of his vest to pull out a small cylindrical object, perhaps twice the length and thickness of your thumb. He holds it lengthwise between his thumb and forefinger, bringing it up to the level of your eyes. Take a look at this, he says. Upon closer inspection, you realize that it is, in fact, a brown paper cartridge, akin to but not entirely like those used by both the line infantry and your own dragoons. There are major differences, of course. Instead of being twisted shut, it is closed with a paper plug on one end and stopped up with a musket ball on the other. A self-contained cartridge, Garing explains. It is something I have been experimenting with on the side for some time. Using the same principle as the percussion fuse, it is possible to create a cartridge which might be loaded into a musket as a single package. Ball, powder, primer, all at once. You nod numbly. Even a fool could recognize the repercussions. Instead of laboriously priming a flintlock's pan with powder, then ramming ball and powder separately down the barrel of a musket or a pistol, the entire thing might be loaded at once, increasing a trained soldier's rate of fire immensely. Not since the invention of the flintlock in the days of Saint Stanislaus 6 centuries ago could a single soldier's fighting power have been increased so drastically. How does it work, you ask? Garing frowns. It doesn't, he replies sourly. A flintlock requires the primer and the powder to be separate, unless you want to cause the entire mechanism to burst. As far as the firearms which you and your men carry are concerned, this new cartridge is useless. So why did you not make your own, you ask? A new sort of lock capable of using your new cartridge? Garing nods. My thoughts exactly. Unfortunately, my partners are rather less enthusiastic. They believe that it would be better to make a slight modification to the current system, substituting the primer powder with a cap of quicksilver. You nod. Even such a relatively minor change would be a great improvement. Theoretically, a quicksilver priming cap would reduce the chances of misfire greatly, if nothing else. Still, it would be nothing compared to the revolution that a self-contained cartridge could bring to the battlefield. I've done some preliminary design work on a weapon that might be able to handle a self-contained cartridge, Garing continues. Unfortunately, Gutierrez and Truscott will not allow me to use company resources to pursue the project. Too much time, too much money, too much risk, they say. The black-coated man shakes his head, which is why I must turn to you and men like you. You look back up the arms merchant. Men like me? King's officers? Banebloods? Men with money to spend? Garing nods. All three, if possible. I shall need men with money to invest in such a project, and men with influence in military circles to see that it is accepted upon completion. Oh, wonderful. I can get into the arms business. That's a very lucrative business. I mean, I want to do this. I mean, because that could really pay off later on. That could pay off a lot. Then again, how much money do I really need to put into this if I actually do it? Let me see. Could you tell me how much you would need altogether? Garing recoils, eyes narrowing as if someone had asked him what the color green tasted like. Of course not, sir. Why the bloody martyr not? You're about to demand an explanation when Garing appears to realize his own error. He puts his hands up placatingly. I assure you, sir, this is due to no subterfuge on my part. It is simply that only a fool will attempt to assess the required cost of a project such as this one. Garing gestures to the pile of designs piled on this table. I might be able to create a successful prototype from one of these designs next week, or we may be facing a process of research and experimentation lasting 20 years. In either case, we would still need many thousands of crowns to set up the machinery and facilities needed to produce the result. But how many thousands is an answer I cannot yet give you. You suppose that makes sense, but the fact that Goering seems to know little about the eventual cost of the project cannot fill you with a great deal of confidence. Huh. Okay. I mean, I got 2,000, so I wonder if I put 2,000 in it, what would that do? It would leave me broke. But I mean, again, I'm assuming that in the siege, I'm gonna get some stuff. And I don't want to. If I remember correctly, I think there's a period after the siege where you can kind of do other things. I will actually take that. It'll be pretty much like how the first game was, where if you didn't have the money to go ahead and leapfrog things, you could just kind of, do some little odd jobs and missions and stuff like that until you eventually got the commission to the next rank. So I think I'll end up doing that. But yeah, I'm curious what the whole 2,000 would do. It would leave me with 53 gold. Or finances, whatever. What would I gain from such an undertaking? I mean, there are questions. Why not? Well, you shall receive a share of whatever. Yep. See, that's what I like to hear right there. Well, you shall receive a share of whatever profit which the end result earns, proportional to the amount you choose to invest, of course, Goering replies. If the firearm which results from the development ends up being adopted for general use by Grenadier Square, then that could be quite a substantial sum indeed. A substantial sum is really quite the understatement, you realize. If the King's army were to accept the weapon for general issue, then one would be needed for every line infantryman, with thousands more to serve as replacements besides. Even a small portion of the royalties from such a thing could make you tens of thousands of crowns, if not more. Of course, such an ideal result might prove an elusive one. Any prospective weapon relying on the new ideas and mechanical principles would be years, if not decades, in the making. Even if a mechanically sound gun were to be the result, there would be no guarantee that it would be adopted for widespread issue. The risk would be great, but given a little luck, the result would not only be an immense amount of money, but the knowledge that you had helped pioneer revolution in warfare. I mean, and that's the thing, you kind of see, after the Revolutionary War, gun technology really progressed pretty fast after that. So, and typically in war, stuff like this tends to progress even faster because of the amount of money thrown at the problem and the amount of resources and the ability to trial and error on such a scale that you can actually, effectively work out all the kinks and come up with some pretty crazy things. Like I remember, I think it was during the Iraq War, that's when the whole scale armor stuff started coming out, and that's when they started using the ceramic plating as opposed to the bulletproof stuff that they used to have before. So there was a lot of technology that's come out of that since the war has started, but it didn't take long for the stuff to come out. So, and also it's kind of one of those things too, where it's just like, I feel like this is one of those hint, hint, wink, wink things in the game. I'm pretty sure also knowing how these games tend to work out, you're going to have to make certain decisions and you're probably going to have to throw even more money at the problem. But it's there for a reason. I'm pretty sure if it doesn't show up by the end of this game, it's going to show up again later on. So yeah, we'll see. I think I'm going to invest pretty much everything I got in it though. We'll see. Surely there are richer, more influential men you could approach. And that's the other thing too. If this works out, I'm going to be a very influential person. When you look at some of the gun makers here in the United States, for instance, these are things that were made hundreds of years ago, and the names, the names. So they're still around. They're very influential. So anywho, surely there are richer, more influential men you could approach. Goering nods. I suppose so. I would likely find interest from a great number of colonels and generals of brigade. If I felt the need, I could even go to Lord Havenport himself. You suppose he could. Goering, Gutierrez, and Truscott is hardly some back alley gun shop. So why don't you? The black-coated arms merchant smiles back, because it may take 10, maybe 15 years to see this project to fruition. Where would those colonels and generals of brigade be then? Dead or retired? Who would be standing in their place, he asked, even though you both already know the answers. Men like you. Not every captain ends up a colonel or a general, you point out. Garing nods. True, but some do, and you're not the only junior officer I plan to approach. Interesting. You nod. It would have only been good business sense for Garing to have approached multiple officers with the potential for high command. In any case, his words make plenty of sense to you. Interesting. So yeah, what other people is he talking about? I mean, maybe Casarosa, but I can't really see Casarosa because I mean, he's not gonna get very far because of him being was it Deathborn or whatever it's called? Oh god, I know I probably screwed that up. But he's baneless basically. So I mean, I'm pretty sure that's gonna be big negative to want to work with him because I mean, he's only gonna go so far. Plus, I mean, Casarosa kind of, as much as I like Casarosa, he seems like the type person where, you know, everything is a nail and he's the hammer. So yeah, I don't know if he would be the best person to invest in, you know, as far as this goes, but you know, we will see. I'm not sure, but I am curious to know who would be the other people that I'd be working with. Might I take a look at your plans? Garing shakes his head as he extends one arm over his scattered technical drawings protectively. I don't think that would be a good idea. I would rather keep these diagrams away from as many eyes as possible. I would not want a competitor to find out what I was working on, after all. I guess I didn't pass a check. Surely you could not expect me to commit my own funds without taking a look at what exactly I am to invest in, he replied. I must insist, sir. Garing sighs, but ultimately steps back, allowing you to approach the mass of diagrams. Very well, though I warn you that there are nothing more than speculations at the moment, and rather opaque ones at that. You try to make as much sense of the technical drawings on the work table as you can. Alas, you realize that what little knowledge you have of the mechanical trades leave you poorly equipped to translate the diagrams drawn by a professional, unfettered by such trivial matters as legibility. Thankfully, Garing is there to explain each diagram to you, though you must stop him from lapsing into incomprehensible mechanical jargon once or twice. He does seem to be able to convey the basic principles behind each design, or rather, the reason why each one remains unsuitable for actual production. That one there seems the most promising, Garing says as he directs you to the drawing of what looks like a revolving cylinder set where the flintlock of a musket would be. The holes in the cylinder would be to fit each cartridge, and the cylinder would revolve to the firing pin each time the striker was pulled back. He's literally coming up with a revolver, a six-shooter. What's wrong with it then, you ask? Garing frowns. The problem is that with such a design, there must be a gap between cylinder and frame to allow the cylinder to rotate. When the loaded cartridge fires, the hot gases from the combustion is vented out through that gap. You grimace involuntarily. Judging by the location of the cylinder, you would reason that such a plume of vented gas would blow directly into any prospective shooter's face. Hardly ideal. The others are no better. Some are plagued by some sort of practical fault. Others, you quickly realize, would be far too fragile to even stand up to the rigors of marching, let alone battle. Others still Garing dismisses as too heavy, too unwieldy, requiring material which would render the resulting weapon far too expensive. Surely there is some way around all these obstacles, you finally exclaim. Surely there is, Garing replies. What remains, sir, is to find it. I mean, I'm still going to invest in it because, again, if he comes up with this stuff, Jesus Christ, the amount of money, I would be happy to invest in this project. I wonder if I had higher intelligence, could I get other results? Man, my intellect is a 61, though. I can't imagine how much smarter do I need to be. Garing breaks out into a bright grin. Oh, that is marvelous, sir. For a moment, it would seem as if you were about to throw all propriety into the air and embrace you boldly. Instead, he simply snatches up a fresh sheet of paper. Shall we draw up an agreement now, sir? The next few minutes pass quickly. Gehring is all but frantic with excitement as he draws up the terms of your investment. Before long, all that remains is the amount which you are to commit to the arms merchant's projects. As far as you know, your current available funds stand at 2,053 crown. The financial exertions you have made to aid your family have not done much good for your personal wealth. Thankfully, that is more than made up for your recent and belated windfall from the ransom of the Antari Lord you captured nearly 3 years ago. In the current state of your finances, how much crown will you invest? I'm gonna do this roundly. I'm gonna keep the 53, but I'm gonna put the 2,000 into it because I'm gonna assume that, like, if this does pay off, this is gonna get me a lot of money. It might take a while, but it's gonna get me a lot of money, and I haven't really used my money that much, honestly. And I'm assuming again that after the battle, I'll probably be able to turn around and get a nice bounty or something like that. So there's going to be other opportunities in order for me to get money, but I'm going to put 2,000 in there. It's going to leave me with 53 crowns. I pray to God there's nothing else that I'm going to need the money for. Also, another thing about choice of games too, a lot of cases, they will have situations like this where you don't have to, like, where you're literally going to have to type in things. I remember, I think it's in Hero Rise, in one of the two games or whatever, there's a puzzle. And I think in order to in order to solve the puzzle, for one, you have to pay attention and actually read, but then also two, you literally have to type in the thing, and you can type in the wrong thing. It's very easy to turn around and do. There's been several games like that where you have to type in certain things and go in certain routes. So again, it does give you a little bit of gameplay there if you kind of, get tired of the reading and stuff like that, and you have to stay engaged. But yeah, we're gonna put 2,000 in. Oh God, did my screen just go away? Hello? Okay, hold on a second. All right, that's back. Yeah, I kind of forgot that so my keys on my the keys on my laptop are also hotkeys for the controls as far as the camera and the recording goes. I kind of forgot about that. I had set that up for my streaming stuff or whatever, and I forgot that when you hit 2 that's gonna change the screen. So I apologize for that, but it should be fine now. And if it's not, then I sincerely apologize. But all right, let me put this back over here. There we go. But yeah, 2,000. Gehring's eyes widen in shock as you tell him exactly how much you plan on investing in his project. Saints above, this might well cover the entirety of the cost of research. I thank you, sir. Might I shake your hand? The other man's fingers are shaky and nervous as he grips your hand, but the grin on his face is broad and earnest. You shall not regret this, sir, he says, voice filled to the brim with enthusiasm. It only takes a few minutes for Gehring to draw up a second copy of the agreement for your own records. Then, with both documents signed, you make your goodbyes and head back for your own tent. You can only imagine what fruit might be born from Gehring's ambitious project. Perhaps it will revolutionize warfare and make you fabulously wealthy in the process. Then again, perhaps not. For the moment, you've other things to occupy your mind. I guess worst case scenario is that I'll break even. I'm sure I'll have somewhat of a profit. It would have been nice to turn around and see if I could come up with something grander or something like that. I'm pretty sure there's an intellect check there. I don't know how smart I got to be, but I'm pretty sure there's an intellect check. And damn it, I wish I turned around and invested more in intellect. So there's that. But anywho, I'm going to stop it right here. In the next video, we will continue onward and see what other things that we'll be able to do. We can either talk to the Lady Katarina, or we can continue writing our memoirs. Actually, that's what I'm going to do. Matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'm going to end it off doing that. So then in the next thing, maybe we can talk to Katarina. We'll see. As the days wear on, the heavy guns continue their deadly work, pounding away at Carinzia's defenses, raining hammer blows of fire and iron upon a thin section of its walls. A gaping wound of rubble and pulverized dust now marks the formerly unbroken line of the city's stone armor. It is only a matter of time before the last of the wall gives way entirely and it is made wide enough for troops to assault it. There are other preparations for the imminent assault as well. Trenches begin reaching out from the camp's forward earthworks, scars etched deep into the cleared earth. Day by day, they advance haphazardly towards the forming breach, twisting and turning in geometric patterns to better protect the sappers' advancing each trench from the defensive fire of the walls. Soon those trenches shall be full of fighting men of the king's army, ready to storm the walls of Caringia. Until then, there's still some scant time to see to other business. What shall you do? Sorry, Katerina. Let's continue writing my memoirs. You spend the next fortnight or so working on your recollections of your years at war. However, you do not spend those days writing. Instead, you devote those long hours to the soul-crushing drudgery of rereading and revising the words which you have already committed to paper. Thus, you spend your days staring at your own handwriting, looking for misspelled words, incorrectly constructed sentences, or in the absolute worst cases, entire paragraphs which do not fit with the rest of the text. After 2 weeks of blotting out errors and sometimes even rewriting entire pages, you can take no more. It becomes too difficult to even look at your own handwriting. You recall that the printing houses of Vittoria employ men whose entire purpose are to do such work for years on end. After half a month of it, you find yourself unable to comprehend how such men do not go mad. That's fair. I mean, that's why you have editors and stuff nowadays. I can only imagine just oof. Alrighty then. So in the next battle, in the next episode, it looks like we're going to be dealing with the siege of Caringia. It is clear to anyone now that the months-long course of the siege is coming to an end. Within the siege camp, almost all is in readiness. Scouting parties range out into the dangerous open ground before the city, dodging fire from the walls and marking the safe passages through the banefire traps, which are sure to have been laid before the walls. At one point, you even see the Duke of Havenport himself, clad in conspicuously inconspicuous patchwork cloak of a Kentari Highlander, as he leads a group of officers almost up to the head of the assault trenches to see for himself the ground which he must order his army to cross. The trenches themselves have been extended to their limits, though it is of some distance from the head of the jagged neck-deep ditches to the foot of Caringia's glacis. The sappers can safely progress no further. The men tasked to storming the breach shall have to cross the 300 paces from the ends of the trenches to the foot of the walls in the open. As for the city itself, Garing's heavy cannons have done their work. The breach has been opened, a man-made chasm of rubble carved out of a man-made wall by man-made cannon, wide enough to march through 8 men abreast and growing wider with every hour. The way into Caringia is open for any man courageous enough or fool enough to brave the defiant resistance of its defenders. Tension rises within the siege camp, for everyone from the humblest camp follower and common soldier to the Duke of Havenport himself knows that time is running out. The heat of the summer wanes by the day. Gray clouds gather on the western horizon, looming closer with each morning. With them comes the promise of autumn rain, of mud, of biting wind, of cold fury of the Antari winter. Caringia must fall, and soon. So, fall it shall in the next episode. So, if you like the video, like the video. If you want to see more content like this, subscribe. I have a lot of things on the channel, and I will have many things in the future. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them in the comment section. I will respond to them as quickly as I possibly can. They get to my phone, and also due to the location of subscribers and stuff like that, daytime is different for certain people. So a lot of times I've seen here recently a lot of the comments that I get, either they're around the time when I release a video or they're literally in the middle of the night. So I'm usually dead ass asleep. So if that's the case, again, I will respond when I can. And usually it'll be when I get up in the morning time and I'm heading on to work or something like that. But I will respond as quickly as I possibly can. So thank you for watching, and we will be fighting in Caringia, in the siege of Caringia, in the next video. See ya.